And I want to remind you guys that we see a lot of children here. We're actually one of the largest pediatric offices in the entire Southeast, and we're so blessed to be able to take care of so many children. And one of the main things that we see so many kids for is ear infections. There are so many children that are plagued with ear infections, and ear infections are very common in children because the eustachian tube, which is that little tiny tube in the inner ear that drains to the back of the throat, is very small, and it's actually horizontally placed in children. And so a lot of times what happens is we get fluid in the ears, the fluid becomes stagnant, and that leads to an infection. So the normal protocol for that is to offer an antibiotic to our child in hopes that the infection will go away by itself. In some cases that works, but a lot of times because of the placement of that tube and because of the normal anatomy around the eustachian tube, the infection returns. So we take our child back to our doctor, we get another round of antibiotics, which is even more strong, and that cycle continues until finally they recommend that your child might need to have tubes put in their ears. Sometimes that can be an effective measure to help prevent future infections, but what we find is that sometimes fails in about 50% of cases. And we have to go back, put the tubes back in again, and you can see it's a vicious cycle. So how does chiropractic play into all of that? Well, there's a very small bone at the top of our neck. It's called the atlas bone, the very first cervical vertebrae. And what happens in our life is this vertebrae gets misaligned, gets shifted in what we call a subluxation. And these subluxations can greatly affect our health. First, they affect the way that our immune system functions, but also too, they can now affect the anatomy of that eustachian tube. So when this bone moves, it can put increasing pressure on that tube, which prevents that fluid to drain. So what we find is that when we remove this misalignment or this subluxation in the top bone, it allows that fluid to drain in the child's ears, and oftentimes it only takes just a few adjustments and that child is back to normal again. So you may be wondering, well, how in the world can I get a subluxation in the spine that can lead to an ear infection, among other things? Well, that's very easy. There's lots of things that lead to those. Most common is trauma. The very first day of our child's life, they get exposed to traumas and through the birthing process. Also, too, as a child begins to grow, they roll over, they crawl, they walk, they play, they have falls, they have accidents. All of those things can lead to the small shift in the bones of the spine, which can lead to subluxations, which can greatly affect our health. And so what we'd love to do is be able to offer you and your child a complimentary consultation to see if those concerns that you have about ear infections or decreased immune system function or any functional problems could be a result of subluxation. So we look forward to taking great care of you soon. Have a great day.